igualdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todos se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hasta dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
Rise up. Rise up, people. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Rise Up Morning Show here on Black Power Media Reloaded. Thanks for joining us and waking up with us this early in the morning. We always appreciate it when, we could be up early with you all.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Even if it's raining like it is where I am, that is okay because we are here. And we'll bring the sunshine today. We'll bring the sunshine. We'll also bring a little bit of doom and gloom because, that's like the state of affairs right now.
It's raining that for sure.
But, we are bringing you international news here on the Rise Up International Morning Show. So glad that the Uprisers are with us this morning. Y'all like, share, and subscribe. Make sure that you are not the only one who is the recipient of these important pieces that we talk about, these articles, the current state of affairs. It's impossible for anyone to keep up with it all. However, in as much as you receive the information, it is important to be able to share it with those who are your friends, your loved ones, those you care about and think would be interested, or even those who simply need to know the truth. There's a lot of misinformation. There's deliberate disinformation that's going around. And some people really are walking around with blinders on. And when you know the truth shall set you free. Make sure somebody else can get those shackles off too.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. Share the knowledge. Each one teach one, right? So
absolutely.
This is a way to do that. And speaking of, you said raining, it was snowing over here in New York. We got at least what I felt like was a random snowstorm because I didn't expect that it was going to be raining. Not raining, snowing, because the day that I was out when it began snowing, somebody said, "Oh yeah, it's supposed to snow bad tonight." I said, "What? Really?" And it came heavy that day, and then it stopped. But we got a good amount of inches. I had to drive in snow that day. Not that I'm not used to it, and what that life is like.
Oh yes. And unfortunately for the first time in life, I have a car right now that is not 4-wheel drive, and I don't even understand how this happens. I have a Suburban. Like in my mind, every single SUV is supposed to be 4-wheel drive.
That's true. I didn't know that there were SUVs that were.
naively enough, neither did I. And once I saw that I purchased a car that was not four-wheel drive, I was like, what? Like, okay, this isn't okay. Even
Yeah.
though I don't have to drive in snow here the way I did in Jersey, but still, like, I have a relative who lives on top of a really steep hill. And I'm not able to drive up that hill. I'm not able to back into her driveway in my Suburban now. I literally have to just pull in head first, which I don't like because it is so steep that I prefer to be able to see very well in front of me when I am leaving her home. But now I just have to back out gingerly, ride my brake all the way down the hill so that I don't go down too quickly. But that was a shock that this car does not have four-wheel drive. And I'm just like, all right, I'm going to get rid of this real quick because that's not my style. Not my style.
Yeah. I mean, I've only driven, I've only had two-wheel drive, front-wheel drive cars because I've always had sedans, but definitely knowing that, like, if I'm going somewhere where it's has more snow, I would definitely prefer a four-wheel
Yes.
drive car because, I mean, I actually had maybe last year where I was going somewhere. I went further upstate and and it was snowing and I had to get up a hill in the snow, but I didn't have enough because I only had the two-wheel drive. Like, I didn't have enough of the momentum going to even get up the hill with the snow.
Right.
So I had to like back up and do it and rev it up really hard.
Yep. And here I am, can't get up a hill without the snow. This is something. This is something,
Exactly. You know what else? But just like Trump renaming
Oh,
the Gulf of
goodness.
Mexico, the Gulf of America.
Look, renaming the Gulf of Mexico, and now there is an effort to revert many military bases back to the names of the Confederate generals for whom they were originally named. This is something. We're definitely living in an alternate universe that happens to be our reality.
Yeah.
But living in times that I never thought I would see because, in my mind, I just thought that the people I thought y'all would rise up and decide that we were not going to take certain things because we don't need to work on, we don't need to have like an act of Congress for some things. Like there are things that we need to just do.
Exactly. It's not about who waiting for somebody to give you permission.
Like
someone's behavior gives you permission. Like if
right,
if Trump is doing whatever he wants, and you know that is infringing upon and trampling on all whatever roles and duties that are supposed to be, for Congress or for the judiciary,
right,
then that means you also can act accordingly. Because you don't, you don't wait and say like, okay, no, don't do that. It's like, when if somebody's slapping you in the face, you just keep saying to them, don't slap me in the face.
Right.
Okay, well, at some point you have to make them. You're going to have to, push back.
That is it. How long will we take it? I'm just waiting. I'm waiting.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, there's just a lot of talk from, those who are in Congress, about going, and I think people, really use that phrase Michelle Obama said that time very to the ground, go when they go low, we go high. Like, okay. What does that do for you? I don't, like
it's not doing much at this point. And even if we were just waiting for Congress, if there are enough people who are in Congress that if they just don't show up, because shit, they don't show up most of the time anyway. So if you just don't show up, you can throw a monkey wrench in some stuff. If you just don't show up, then there's something to be said about what will not get done, what will not go through, what will not pass. And there's nothing that even Donald Trump can do to a Congress member for not showing up.
Exactly. And I think also too the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. And then I saw where Google also went ahead and changed it within maps, talking about okay, well, you could, if you're in America, you'll see Gulf of America, and if you're in Mexico, you'll see Gulf of Mexico.
So dumb. But speaking of Google, they have even modified their calendar, where there is no longer the mention of Black History Month or Women's History Month.
I didn't even notice that part. That one I have to go back and look. Yeah, because, and it's just like, okay, this shows you, you know, the caucasity that exists when it comes to, you know, white supremacy, and white people just showing you in your face that everything is arbitrary. We're just doing anything, you know, for some, you know, this is a show of power, right? That they have the power to name, like, you know, Kujichagulia. This is what we talk about all the time. And people, I think, like, sometimes will think that this is ridiculous, or that I'm like, oh, Kimba's here.
Is somebody popping in? Is it a special guest? You know,
but yeah, going back to Kujichagulia, you know, the right of self-determination, the right to, you know, name ourselves, speak for ourselves in that kind of way. Like, everybody in the world has that. And this is just another you know, show of colonialism, to when we know that's what colonialism does, right? We know that what it does is asserts power over everything. And it tries to assert power in terms of naming places. You know, America, what we call America now is known as Turner Island.
Right.
So when they, you know, so this is just another colonial move to show you that colonization never ended. And that multinational corporations, as we've seen with colonialism and imperialism, help to support and lead the way. And that's what Google's doing. Because who said that you needed to change it to Gulf of America?
Not a doggone soul. Not a soul. No one was thinking about it. I don't think it was at the top of anyone's list, honestly.
Where's the necessity?
It's not there. Definitely not there. I mean, you know, Google. Hey,
Kimba's here.
Natasha ain't even let me put my makeup on. She just was like,
you know, what it is. You
well, Kimba, you don't need makeup. You got your beauty sleep, right?
I wish. What's happening though? I hear y'all going in though. Y'all talking about power right now. The power to define.
Absolutely.
The power to define phenomena, right?
Exactly.
You know, make it act in a, you know, desired manner. And so that shows that we need, we start calling these places what we want to name them.
Exactly.
That's right.
It don't matter what they call it, Gulf of America. What do we want to call it?
Exactly.
That's it.
Because that power to just say, okay, well, we're going to call this that, you have it too. You don't have to be the president of the United States to do that. Like, the president of the United States is just another person like anybody else is, you know, in this agreement of a country, quote unquote, that, you know, that you have. But okay, Mexico also has a country. So why is it that they, you know, can't call it the Gulf of Mexico and recognize it this whole time as that, whether or not, you know, you're here or in Mexico? And like, what does that mean about, you know, Mexico's sovereignty? Like, what message does that send to people about other countries that are not America? It even makes me think about the term Middle East, that you know is also another invention of colonialism. Right?
Exactly.
How they have been naming everything and naming location and defining your whole world off of white supremacy and colonialism.
Absolutely.
Let's call it the Gulf of New Africa.
Right.
You know,
it's a Gulf of New Africa now. We just renamed it. That's what we calling it now. No Gulf of America.
I am with it.
For sure. What got y'all going this morning though? I hear y'all talking about Trump.
Oh, well, you know that there is no shortage of things that we could talk about, whether we are talking about renaming the Gulf of Mexico, whether we are talking about the annexation of Canada and Greenland, whether we are talking about the owning of Palestine, where Palestinians are not welcome to return, but they'll have to go somewhere else because we're going to buy it, we're going to run it, and we're going to sell it to some other places too. Like, what? We're going to sell some parts to some other countries too. This is absolutely bananas every time you turn on the news, every time you turn on the radio, every time something appears on your phone from any news application, there is something popping up about this narcissist and what he's trying to do now. We have no shortage of things to talk about.
Are we getting into those things? Because you said the annexation of Canada. That's interesting right there, man.
That was on the list too.
I mean, there's also, you know, the it just keeps going, but you know, the Mount Denali that, you know, he renamed Mount McKinley after it had no longer been that. And so, like, this is just another way in which, you know, this idea of what does it mean to like have power is just being played in your face, and like, what are you going to do about it, right? But and also the power of naming, like you were saying, it goes back to that. So when people we've been having conversations, you know, as African people, Pan-Africanists, Black nationalists for the longest, about the power of naming and why you should look at your own name and, you know, change that. You should look at your, you know, what does it mean to have the slave name, you know, last name that you have, and how that continues on to identify you. I was talking to a friend of mine from Mississippi the other day, and he was saying that one of the ways in which they also try to continue this property of theirs is to make sure that, you know, you still have their last names. Like in Mississippi, they're still identifying you and your family as to who used to own you, so that they know that kind of lineage. And so, like, this again, you know, the idea of the power of naming, the power of language. And when we, you know, talk about looking at our own language and what does that mean, and how does that assert things, and you know, what power carries in a name, you know, what is it teaching in a name?
Yeah. I mean, that's, hey, we on Black Power Media, we talk about Black Power. That's one of those things that come with power, being able to define, rename things. Malcolm X, when he went on that interview, that's one of the most powerful interviews, when he was talking about his name, and when the white guy asked him, so what is your gifted name, and he goes into, you know, I don't know what my name is, right? So he began, those in the Nation of Islam began to shed their last names, because they understood the connection of slavery and the master having control over them and stripping them of their names and who they are. So it was that process of reclaiming who we are. And part of that was just like renaming themselves, and then you know, beginning to rename, like build the world for ourselves. And if you're building a world for yourself, you begin to define things, right? And what it means to you. So even with history, I think you can make the connection with history when you just begin just like reshaping or transforming just everything about your existence, right? That in order to create a culture that you control, is all about that culture. And so when you're a part of someone else's culture, they're going to be describing and defining things for that culture, because it benefits them. It relates to them. You know, it's a part of an experience that they have. And so we're part of that experience. That's why, you know, even just speaking of names, it's funny we're on this topic, because it just, you know, came to me that a few years ago, I think I brought up how I was doing the barter free store, doing the exchange in the community. And when I was out there, I was also doing a petition to rename one of the schools in the community. because at the time, and well, not even just right now, I still think this way. All of these schools, we have a school predominantly 90% to 99% Black children, but the schools are named after white people. And I'm like, yo, this is a serious contradiction. You know, we need to name these schools after Black people, after Black historical figures, and make that a part of the lesson. Like, who is Garvey? I go to Garvey Elementary, Marcus Garvey Elementary. Who is Marcus Garvey? And begin
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
have those type of conversations. So this particular school this year, because this is Malcolm X's centennial, I wanted to have an elementary school that I went to rename Malcolm X and Betty Shabazz, elementary school. And so that's something I'm going to be working on. I'll keep you in tune. I got was told the process to make that happen. So hopefully we'll be able to make that change for the centennial.
Yeah, that would be great. And I mean, also too, you mentioned, world making, world building. That's what we're talking about. Like, when you say the process of naming is the process of making your world, that's exactly what it is. Because, white people already think the world belongs to them.
Yeah.
And so therefore, everywhere has to reflect them. Ever has to reflect their names and the history that their names tell, and the culture that their names carry. And, there's also the idea of placemaking with words, so that, that's how things come to be called, because, you're making a place when you name something. You're creating that space. Now, when you say that, people, associate a space with that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's them thinking that they own and rule the world, and so therefore the world has to look just like them.
Right, like the maps. When you think about it, it's all a part of their experience and vision, their design. But from the maps, how the world is carved up, from the naming of these countries that they've renamed. This is what Africans, indigenous people, call these places. These weren't the boundaries that they have to take that power back. And Trump, you're talking about this annexation and renaming things. That's what white power, white supremacy, that's what they do. To assert their control over things. Who's this brother? Y'all got somebody new to the rise up?
I don't know who that is.
Hey man, batten down the hatches. You know what it is.
Rise up. What's up, Kalanji?
Rise up. What's good? How y'all feeling?
We feeling good,
Good,
this
good.
early morning.
Okay. I'm on the move, so forgive me for hopping in. I figured I needed to hop in. I don't be showing my face.
And you still not.
It's all good. I'm with you in spirit.
Right.
My sound clear or what?
You do?
Yeah, it's clear.
Yep. Cool.
How you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. I'm grand, and I'm honored to be on Rise Up this morning, and that ain't no joke. I'm saying I'm honored because of the fact that I'm on here with three people I respect, and you know what I'm saying. And if you know me, I don't respect too many people. I'm gonna just say what it is. Don't need to be like, but I want to say just in regards to this whole combo right here. Listening to you all break it down, it reminds me of the movie Roots. It reminds me of Kunta. How these crackers and before I say that, I said crackers. I know that some people comment, well, you don't have to use like cracker. I use whatever word I want to because of the fact it has a problem when derogatory terms are being used against us. So let me start with that. But these crackers, and we know the history of the cracker. We don't have to get into all that.
Right.
Would beat us into submission so that we can accept their names. And of course that's white hegemony. That's long time. That's just how they do. They desire ownership. A dog, an animal. They just, I'm gonna call you this. You understand what I'm saying? That's exactly how they deal with us, and that's what Trump is doing right now. He's exercising his right to be white. I look at this, and I'm loose nowadays. I'm saying, last year I was kind of quiet. I allowed people to run their mouths and talk crazy and whatnot. And I just want to put out for the record, that's no more. Okay. But I can recall I was on another platform, and I don't have to name the name. And I remember that there was some folks in the chat, and I saw a white boy said, we're going to now call him whatever. We're going to call him by this name. You understand? By the name that my parents named me, and that the people that love me call me. You understand?
Yeah.
And I noticed that was allowed. And I noticed that there was another person on that particular platform that said, "Oh, such and such, call me by my honorable name." And that's Nigel Brown. I'm not ashamed of that. Again, that's the people that know and love me. That's what they call me. You know what I mean? So don't get it twisted. I don't have a slave name because I'm not a slave. The African is not a slave. The African's never been a slave. The African was enslaved. We got to be clear about that, right? But I'm just saying, it's just amazing how we take on these European or dominant cultures traits in, saying we're going to strip this person of their name. And that's what Trump is attempting to do right now. We're going to call it the Gulf of America. We, as African people, we can no longer acknowledge what colonizers attempt to relay or portray or define other people as. So we can never call it the Gulf of America because we don't respect that. You understand what I'm saying? In fact, it's hard enough saying the Gulf of Mexico, but we're going to just keep it at, you know what I mean? So I just want to chime in on that. I ain't trying to take over the convo, but I was just saying how it reminds me of just how they get down and how some of us get down, because we know, like, for example, and I'm going to dig a little deeper, but I also think about how a family member may change their name, or a friend may change their mama named them such and such. I'm gonna call them what. That sounds good, but you're not harming the individual by, quote unquote, not honoring or respecting their name. You're showing your own ignorance. You know what I'm saying? The fact that this white boy from New York, y'all let him get away with this, folks that's in New York. I ain't naming no names on the screen, but this white boy from New York, he pops his orange-haired ass up in on the world stage and decides that it's a takeover, not a makeover. That's the same thing that he did in New York. His father being a quote unquote real estate. You know what I'm saying? They just took shit. This is how gentrification or land grab begins. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out, and I'm yielding.
Look, if I could add briefly, appreciate that. I just recently was watching Spike Lee's. They were playing it at the college, February 1st, and Malcolm X. And in that film, when X, who was Malcolm Little at the time, was incarcerated, there was that scene where they were attempting to break Malcolm and have him say his number. And that reminded me of Roots. It took me back to Roots. I ain't think about it before, but when I seen that scene, I was like, wow. And they finally broke him. And he what's your number? And he said his number. I was like, yo, that was so powerful right there. So what you said, Kalonji, even, it took me back to that. That's another example, just trying to break, a person. Yeah.
That's a perfect example. I was locked up 37 years ago. And to this day, I still remember the quote unquote prison number I had. And it's because I had to say it 6 times a day. So it's not that I wanted to, it's not that I desire to remember it. It's just like that's something like a social security number is etched inside of your head, a phone number. You know what I mean? And exactly without me thinking about it for decades, I can spit it right now. And verbatim, because this is how it's a method of indoctrination. You understand what I'm saying? And that is when we talk about warfare, you have to convince people mentally first. They spirit, break their mental, and then physically, that's the last resort. But the warfare begins inside of your mind. All you have to do is believe that an individual can beat you, or as they say, believe and you can achieve. You understand?
That's it.
That's how they get down.
Exactly. No, I think that sets us up good for a Black Power break. What y'all think? So we can get to some stories.
Definitely does.
Continue.
Let's get it. Won't be broke.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Okay. It's coming, y'all. I'm pulling it coming today.
Hey,
We should. I set it up. You know, the Malcolm.
I'm ready though. Here we go.
Sprang up throughout the length and breadth of the African world. The Conventional People's Party, a mass party, sprang up in Ghana. The Democratic Party of Guinea, a mass party, sprang up in Guinea. Throughout the length and breadth of Africa, you had TANU, the Tanzanian African National Union, which is now the CCM. My Swahili is not as good as yours. Chimpa, Chimpuraza, Mazuri.
That's very good.
Oh, my Swahili is bad. Thank you. Chapa Chapman Puduzi. Exactly. And that's their new party. But all over Africa, mass parties sprung up. If you look at the Caribbean, mass parties sprung up. And if you look at the United States, mass movements sprang up. So the call was heeded for mass confrontation. Of course, the Fifth Pan-African Congress made two definite and precise resolutions, which I want to highlight. Of course, Pan-Africanism from the very beginning was anti-colonial. From the very beginning, it was anti-colonial. It was weak. So when they came, they didn't say to the Queen, we're going to put you out of the country. They said, you must treat the natives right. You must educate them. You must prepare them for self-government. These are things that are weak, but they were anti-colonial in essence. We must not look at the form. And we got stronger, the more this anti-colonialism will express itself. Now, anti-colonialism is nothing but anti-capitalism. Because colonialism is nothing but an offshoot, an aspect of capitalism. Therefore, if you're anti-colonial, you must be anti-capitalist, if you're logical in your thinking, of course, and your actions. Some people are not, but we are speaking of logical people here. Yes. If you're anti-capitalist, then you must be socialist. Capitalism cannot unite Africa. Africa has to be united by socialism. Now, there's a lot of confusion here on this question of capitalism and socialism. Just recently, a young man said to me, but socialism died. I said, it did? He said, you didn't hear about it? I said, I missed the funeral. Of course, he spoke about the betrayals that occurred in the East. You must not let capitalism confuse your thinking. This is a struggle which Pan-Africanism takes on. We struggle against imperialism in the ideological arena because many people think that capitalism just wants to exploit your labor. It wants to confuse your thinking and make you think just like them. And this is where the real fight occurs. So therefore, this struggle of confusing the thinking, I told the man, I said, you're talking nonsense. Socialism cannot disappear. It cannot die. He said, yes, it can. I said, no. He said, how do you say that? I said, well, you are judging socialism by socialists. You don't do that. He said, I've never heard such nonsense. If you don't judge socialism by socialists, what do you judge it by? I say, you judge it by its principles. Every system is judged by its principles, never its adherents. So he still saw confusion. He said, you're just talking double talk. I said, okay, do you judge Christianity by Christians? So we must not be confused here. Socialism doesn't fall because of betrayal. No system does. The person who betrays themselves goes to the mud, but the system, with its eternal principles, keep marching on. If a system fell because of betrayal, Christianity would have been finished with Judas. At least Judas had the dignity to hang himself. Some of these who betray socialism don't have that dignity. Gorbachev still runs around speaking and picking up 30 pieces of silver everywhere. So socialism is an economic system, and there can only be two in the world, capitalism or socialism, because every economic system must answer one fundamental question. Who will own and control the wealth of the country? Who will own and control the means of production? The question can only be answered two ways. Either a few will own or everyone will own. It's as simple as that. And under capitalism, we say, please summarize that we might have. No, I'm going. I thought I had 20 minutes. It's my time. I thought I had 20 minutes. I was going by the clock. How much time do I have left? I'm sorry. Maybe I'm off. That's what I thought I did. I was watching it. No, I'm watching my clock. I'm irresponsible. I'm revolutionary. I go by time. I got my clock right here. Matter of fact, I can say it in 2 words, Black Power. And today we've gone to 1, Pan-Africanism. Yeah. So there are only two economic systems, and it's going to be capitalism or socialism. Capitalism is a backward system. There's no need to discuss it. Certainly anyone who's been made a slave by capitalism ought to be hesitant in trying to support the system. But as a conscious African, I must be against capitalism, and I must, of course, seek to destroy it. So when you speak of Pan-Africanism, you must understand you speak of socialism. And we want to underline there's only one socialism out here, and that's scientific socialism, whose principles are abiding and universal. There's no such thing as African socialism, Chinese socialism, Russian socialism, Arab socialism. There's only one socialism. The confusion arises over ideology. That is that which guides you towards your objective. So we're saying clearly here, Pan-Africanism is not an ideology. It is an objective. It is an achievable. Pan-Africanism is the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. All we want is a unified continent with a socialist system. That's all. But you know, Africa is the richest continent in the world. When she's properly organized, she'll be the most powerful. Yeah, of course. Of course, and me, all I want is power. I'm not like others. I don't want money. I don't want popularity. I just want the power I'm supposed to get. That's all. That's all.
Welcome back. You are tuned into the Rise Up Morning Show.
Love that Black Power break. I always love to hear Kwame Ture.
Yeah.
And I love it when he says, look, I can sum this up in 2 words. Black power.
Black power.
Better yet, 1, Pan-Africanism. And what is it? Total liberation of Africa under socialism. Africa for Africans.
And yeah, he brings up you know, when he says, when you just mentioned, you know, how he sum it in 2 words, Black power, like that's what we were just talking about, right? What does it mean to have power, and how do you exercise those things, and how do you also exercise those things while you're in the position, even like we're in, like we still have power, right? And we're asking people to think about that Black power. I think all that stuff that we were even talking about before, in terms of, you know, what we've done to resist the naming, being named by Europeans, is a form of us practicing that Black power that he's talking about.
And who has the power?
We got the power.
Who has the power?
We got the
power.
power.
But I think he made, you know, the point of just the different systems, right? When we're dealing with capitalism as opposed to socialism, and under capitalism, you know, you can have a person such as Elon Musk, $430 billion. I mean, this person has put his head should be at the guillotine.
Absolutely. I think there's nothing more disappointing than people who have power and don't realize it. There is nothing that is more disheartening when we are the ones, even though there is that 1% that has the majority of the money, we are the people. We got the numbers. We are the ones with the power. Why in the world?
Yeah, because nothing moves without the collective.
We get it together and move. That's right.
Yeah, but it reminds me of the circus. You know what I'm saying? The lion forgets he's a lion after a while because, you know what I'm saying? So then one day by and by, you know, the lion's doing his tricks. He jumping through the loops and the hoops and all that type stuff. And the kids taking pictures in front of him and white folks sticking their head in his mouth, and all of a sudden he snaps.
Yes.
Then when he snapped, it was a lion for being a lion. They like, man, how the lion went rogue. The elephant decided to trample over some folks out in the joint. No, they remembered who they were. They like, yo, hold up.
Absolutely.
Like, you going too far right now. You taking selfies. I don't even want to be on IG. You know what I'm saying? My hair ain't right. You know what I'm saying? Messing up my mane. You know what I'm saying? All right. Snap. You know what I mean?
That is the revolution. When the people snap.
Yeah.
When y'all ready to snap, it's gonna be revolution.
We got moral of the story. We got hop our ass out this circus. You know what I'm saying?
Pretty much.
And assert our power to do that.
True indeed. Anyway, Kiana, I think you got a story. Kiana I'm gonna let the cat out the bag. You know what I'm saying? I said here for a few minutes. As soon as Kiana heard I was gonna be here, she like, I gotta go at 7:53.
Get out of here.
Ikemba, Kalanji be on that BS because Kalanji knows that I have a German lesson this morning, right?
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Which I even had to change the time.
No, before you go there, now I just want to put together because they put things together. They mentioned Elon Musk, and she said she got a German lesson. I'm gonna say.
To tell you something, it's important to know the language of the colonizer. We need to know the language of the colonizer. We need to know the philosophy of the colonizer. We need to know who they studied, why they got to their ideology. We need to know all of this.
I was connecting the dots. That's all.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for connecting the dots. Thank you for connecting these dots. But speaking of this whole conversation about renaming things and just, commandeering things for yourself. One of the other things that Trump is trying to commandeer for a use for which it was not intended, although the use for which it was intended is still not good. Trump is trying to commandeer Guantanamo and basically make it like the next ICE detention center. So there are 4 Venezuelan migrants who filed a petition for writ of habeas corpus. And this was, they filed this last year, but there is still, their case is still ongoing. Still, there's a temporary restraining order against them being deported because Trump comes in now and was trying to take these 4 migrants and send them straight to Guantanamo, but also is trying to make Guantanamo another ICE detention center because Trump is saying, if we send them there, this is going to send a strong message. So we have our friends at the Center for Constitutional Rights who are representing these migrants, but have also put out a statement against Trump's use of Guantanamo as a and I won't even say run of the mill because none of this should be run of the mill, but as a regular ICE detention facility. I don't know if most people are aware, but ICE detention facilities are not run by the federal government. And this is where people get into a lot of this gray area about what is the authority of these immigrations and customs enforcement officers. What can they really do? People are now afraid because in addition to all of this with Trump wanting to send people to El Salvador, wanting to use Guantanamo, pretending that there's this big crackdown on immigrants. The scare tactic now is, well, I've taken away the protection from hospitals, from schools, from places of worship. So now people are wondering, if an ICE detention officer comes into my church, what can I do? Do I say you can't come in? Yes, you tell them they can't come in. You let them know that they are not able to come into your place of worship. And particularly, they are not allowed in any designated private areas of your church or mosque or synagogue or other place of worship. They cannot go into what you consider to be private areas. They do have to have a warrant. They do need to be able to show you proper documentation. And there are a lot of groups that have been putting out some of this information with their recent Know Your Rights trainings. I'm in Georgia, so we look heavily to the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, BAJI, and also GLARD, the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights. They have been putting out a lot of Know Your Rights information because everything is muddled and jumbled right now. And the goal of the Trump administration is to keep people in a constant state of confusion. Mass chaos, confusion, and fear is their goal. This is the reason why these executive orders are coming out at breakneck speeds. You can't even keep up with everything that's come out. But if people do keep up, what they will see is that almost immediately when these orders come out, within 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, there's a stay. They've been held up in court. And the courts are saying, you cannot enforce this. This is not constitutional. One of the things that we've been seeing is the intimidation of federal employees, particularly those who have jobs that pertain to departments of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the way that they are being bullied and forced in many ways to leave their positions is illegal. It's not something that can typically be done. So there have already been lawsuits filed on the basis of some of these firings. Trump yesterday or the day before, it was a big story that he's halted all funding for National Institutes of Health research, which impacts many colleges and universities, medical schools. There's already an injunction for that order. Like, there is very little that can actually be put into effect from these executive orders. And right now, using Guantanamo Bay as an ICE detention facility is something that is not going to be able to go through. But of course, there's no limit to what Agent Orange will try. So he tried it. And this is where we are.
That's right. All he keep doing is trying stuff.
Right. Now, I want to point out too, because I think that one of the things that this administration, quote unquote, and I hate to even use the word administration, because when we talk about administration, it seems like an administration, should have some type of responsibility or accountability. So I don't even like using that. But anyway, one of the things that's going on is it is a huge distraction, and I think that our people, or the people at large, trying to, as Kiana mentioned, keep up with what adventure or what nonsense he's going to come with on a daily basis. So you can't even prepare yourself if we're moving on a reactionary basis. I think that one of the things we should keep in mind is that we're talking about imperialism, right? We're talking about colonialism. We're talking about domination as a whole. So once you get that idea in your head and realize that you have to operate from a state of war, meaning that you have to understand that these are battles and these are tactics, and they'll throw so much at you, as they say in boxing, they throw so many lefts, so many rights, you be begging for a left. You understand what I'm saying? So I think that we have to focus on self-determination is not just some type of empty rhetoric. I'm saying that we have to prepare as organizations, families, groups, etc., for what is coming down the pipe. We have to move in a manner that we have to move in a way that we understand that all of the programs can be cut at any moment. In fact, what we're doing here today, just being on this platform, I won't be surprised. I truly believe that the whole TikTok thing was a soft run for something bigger. Because if you get all the people that lost their minds when they said TikTok was canceled, you understand what I'm saying? Imagine if they shut YouTube down. Imagine that they shut down Facebook and IG. We have to remember that two of the quote unquote richest or wealthiest men on the planet own social media platforms. Elon Musk and Zuckerberg. They're in the top 4 wealthiest folks on the planet. And we throw Jeff Bezos in there, Amazon. So just in the top 5, you have total mind control. You have shipping, export, all types of things going on just on that alone. So while we're talking about Trump, we have to understand that this is about white power.
Absolutely. And I think that the important thing for people to know in that story is that the migrants who filed for this writ of habeas corpus, it was because they were granted asylum originally. They came here seeking asylum, and there are some circumstances that do prevent them from going back from Venezuela. It was Trump who came in and said, I don't care about any asylum seekers. I'm going to send you back because you came from a place that I don't particularly care for. Because we're not doing this to Ukrainians. We're not doing this to anybody who's coming from a place where the people are lily white. We're not doing this to Germans. We're not even, as a matter of fact, we're welcoming South Africans who are white.
Oh, yeah.
The white South Africans are welcome. Asylum seekers are not. But these people who were granted asylum, who did everything the quote unquote right way, as the Trumpers would say, they followed the path, and they were still attacked in this. So all of this is just to show people that even when you so-called follow their rules, you so-called play their game the way they want you to play it, you're still a target if you don't fit into white hegemony. And when we think about the weaponization of something like immigration policy, what we realize is that the targets never look like Donald Trump. They never look like an Elon Musk. They're always going to look like us.
Absolutely. And I think also to Kalanji's point, and your point as well, Kayana, in terms of, you know, how we need to be resisting it. There's a story that I wanted to share about how in Detroit, there's been this creation of the People's Assembly to guide a movement against ICE. So I'm just going to share my screen really quickly so the people can also see what I'm talking about here. And so this story talks about how basically in Detroit, a People's Assembly of a couple of hundred people has formed to debate and act on strategies to counter ICE and the Trump administration. It talks about how, as it's ramping up, and we've been talking about these assaults on immigrant and migrant communities, that teachers, nurses, and neighbors are forming committees to discuss and respond to ICE, how shows up, and students also, again, going back to what we were talking about, people knowing their rights. Students are sharing Know Your Rights flyers and anti-ICE rallies, and attending anti-ICE rallies, like in Chicago. When teachers thought ICE was trying to get in, they denied them access. The Chicago Teachers Union also has been forming a quote-unquote sanctuary team and has called for a walk-in to protect their students. Also in Detroit, hundreds of people, you know, who are within this People's Assembly are strategizing and discussing how to defend against ICE. And so they had an assembly, and they had a lot of debate around several strategies that they could use to push back on ICE. And then they made a decision of what to take action on. And so basically this article is really talking about how communities locally have been coming together, you know, from all different kinds. And then they also mention how whether it's formed as rapid response networks, to respond to activists, or to respond to raids, that activists should focus on prevention, like preventing, being proactive, like Kalanji was also talking about, by waging a broad political struggle, how to help people organize in their workplace, and how to use propaganda and political education to push back on the narratives and the culture of fear mongering that's being fostered by the Trump administration. And so they're being formed at schools and at restaurants, but also they were saying like these also need to be done at other places, like other workplaces, hospitals, clinics, and things like that should also be creating these types. And then it also says that if you're in a workplace where people who may be at risk of being targeted by ICE, don't wait for your boss to say something. Like, talk to your coworkers and form a plan of what to do when ICE knocks. Write a joint statement as coworkers explaining where you stand, coordinate with other workers, and join the People's Assembly. So they're basically, you know, telling people to not just take it and take whatever they're saying and whatever propaganda is out there and run with it, but actually fight back against it, organize against it. Like, that's how you actually win. That's how you actually protect yourself, is by organizing, which this is something that, you know, we've talked about. And I think that, of course, we've had organizations around for a while, but we know that even if you think the organization's not doing what they supposed to do, you can create an organization with, you know, yourself, by gathering the people around you and, you know, coming up with ideas and plans and acting from that. So I thought this story was really good to think about how people are already resisting, and to let people know that, like, as much as the news will cover what is happening and all of the craziness that's going on, we need to also think about how are people resisting and what ideas can we be getting from the stuff that people are doing in different communities to resist some of this stuff.
Right. And I want to point out real quick too, and I appreciate you sharing that, Natasha. I think that it's important because I do see someone in the chat mentioned that they hadn't heard about, I guess, what was going on in their particular area. That the reality is we never hear about everything that's going on in our particular areas and regions. And that's part of the reasons why we exist in regards to propaganda, to media. You know what I'm saying? So that's why the Black Power Reloaded is important. And I'm saying that because I would like to, at this time, invite folks. If you're doing things in your community, let us know. Send us a memo. Send us a piece, because we want to highlight organizations who are committed to our people's liberation. We want to highlight anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist organizations. Now, that don't mean it's not a guarantee that we're going to talk about your thing, because sometimes folks send us straight up BS, and I'm just going to say that. You know what I'm saying? If you know that you're not serious about the work and you just want to look like leadership, then this ain't the place to really send your materials, because we're not going to play games with you. We're not here to promote individuals. We're not into cult of personality, so that's not what we're talking about. But if you have information on events, programs, demos, etc., feel free to send them to mediablackpower@gmail.com. That's mediablackpower@gmail.com. But also follow us on our social media platforms and, DM us. We're on IG, we're on Twitter, Facebooks, etc. Send us the information, and shout out to the workers out there, because we know as organizers, sometimes it's difficult to get the word out, so it's not like, folks aren't trying to get it out. We don't have the propaganda arm of the state doesn't belong to us. Media is a state operated situation when it comes to media here in the United States, or here any imperialist media. So we encourage you all to seek out platforms like Black Power Media Reloaded. There are so many others that exist, so make sure that you tap in and keep us in tune.
Absolutely. 100%. I think also too, it's important for people to know what's going on in different places, so people don't feel like they're in silos. I think sometimes you're doing the work that you're doing in your community, and you may feel like, man, are we the only ones dealing with this? Are we the only ones having to figure a way out? Are we, the only ones coming up with this idea? There's these struggles that we're having around this. How can we improve our tactics or whatever? Like, I think that's people being able to see what else is happening really helps people to really feel like they can do something, and that, whatever they're doing is not just some kind of small isolated thing, and that it'll never make an impact, but know that there's other people doing it too. And then I think that also gets people motivated to do the work when they know that the work is being done in different places, and that, we're not in silos, even though we might not be in the same places doing it all the time, but that the work is still connected and it's out there.
No, definitely. I agree with that. The two stories that was brought up just made me think of Omega Evers in a conversation that we had in one of our department meetings. And one of the things was brought up in regards, I think it was a department meeting, so many meetings, I don't even know. But anyway, there was talk about ICE. I'm tired. Hey, early in the morning.
Early in the morning.
But ICE coming, and we don't have to let them in. We don't have to let the police in. Like they have to have a warrant. So it was a discussion about legality because of, type of concerns. I think it was an event that we were talking about doing a particular program on campus, and concerns about, folks just showing up, pigs just showing up at the doorstep. So knowing your rights is important. So you can see how these sort of things could just affect us all. These policies that are being put forth by these colonizers that are running this country right now. But the South Africa piece that was brought up too, I thought that was important, an important thing to point out, because what's the end game that's one of the questions that we should be asking ourselves. Of course, it's like domination, could sustaining that domination over African people and other oppressed people. But what's the strategy? Understanding the strategy. I just remember coming into consciousness, we would have these conversations, and sometimes it'll get a bit, conspiracy theorists, which there's nothing wrong with. Sometimes we might focus on trying to unravel the conspiracy so much that we don't do no work. Dr. Amerson Wilson. Yeah, Dr. Amerson Wilson used to talk about that, but with the South Africa piece, man, or Occupy Tanzania piece, and bringing those colonizers over there, who are creating all white towns. These are white supremacists over there in Occupy Tanzania, and bringing them here, right? Not having a problem with bringing those people here and creating a settlement or whatever they have planned. And your best friend is Musk, who's a white supremacist as well. So just like, what is understanding what the strategy and what the end game is when it comes to these folks, and it's definitely what we see is a response to anything that is perceived as an advancement by African people and other people at the expense of white power. These are things that they are very conscious of, and anytime white workers are not doing well, that'll give an opportunity for the bourgeoisie to organize those folks against what they would create, as a threat to their power and privilege. So whether it's Black folks or the Afro-Latino community, who are Black folks too, but all of these indigenous people, all people could be created as a threat to white advancement and white power. And so if you look at all of these policies, I mean, they're anti in this nature. Colonize, the colonize to prevent that struggle against white political and economic domination. But yeah.
No, and I think to your point about before we go into our Black Power break, I think your point about thinking about what is the end goal is very important, and that, like, even if you go down, you're going down the rabbit hole, that's the process is of unraveling things. Like, you have to, I think also, when people talk about I think the word is not disconsciousness, what's that word? The word when you think something, but there's something that challenges what you're thinking, but you have a hard time accepting the truth of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. This cognitive
dissonance. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I'm glad I was also saying
making me think this morning, boy.
It makes me think of, cognitive dissonance, because when we say, conspiracy theory, and we know that there's a history around even the term conspiracy theory, right? How people come, figuring out different things that were trying to be hidden, where then, it ended up becoming this whole thing of like conspiracy theorists, and, as a way to discredit people who, were onto something about what was actually happening against the veil that was being put in front of everyone, everyone's eyes. But anyway, to say all that to say that, like, it reminds me of like what you're saying about us maybe having to think about, okay, what exactly is the end game when we're seeing these moves made, because we have to go down, even when you're thinking about conspiracy theorists, we have to go down as far as we think it wouldn't go. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, when we're thinking about cognitive dissonance, we're trained to think that white people, America, Europeans, the colonial structure wouldn't go to certain places or wouldn't go to certain lengths, right? To be like, okay, even if you thought like, okay, maybe they're trying to do this, but no, they're not that crazy. They wouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? That this idea of combating what you are made to think about who they are, and, you know, still, even though you see and you experience all of what they've done, that you would still be like, okay, well, but maybe they wouldn't go that. Like, no, you have to think about, like, leave no stone unturned. Like, you have to think that they will go to places that you think that they wouldn't go.
Yeah, I mean,
place that you shouldn't think that they would go in terms of what might be their end game. And I think that's how we you know, do our own thing and also position ourselves to be proactive when we do what you say, like, think about for ourselves, what does this mean? These actions that they're taking, what does this mean for the long run?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was a book written, I think, in 1990, Behold the Pale Horse. You know, I remember reading that in like 97, 98, right? And they were talking about microchipping folks, and they was already microchipping animals, and why they want to microchip you, be able to track you and all of these other things. And that was scary at the time when I wrote it. I was a young folk, you know, adolescent reading that, and it blew my mind. But those sort of things, that's an example of how someone will be like, this is far-fetched. They ain't going to do this. Why would the government do this? This is crazy. This is insane. And then news stories start coming out 10 years later, 12 years later,
Yeah, exactly.
of them doing that. And then at the same time, they don't even necessarily have to do that to track you, right? Because of the technology, there's so many other ways that they can track you through your cell phones, through, you know, all types of use of satellites and so forth. They don't even need to microchip you if they don't want, for the need to track you. That's the point I'm making.
Exactly,
but it's like there's these things that are revealed to us in regards to what the government is trying to do, to your point, and we may think that it's far-fetched or outlandish, but at the same time, we have to think about what is it that they want to do. Forget even if the tactic seems a little far-fetched. What do they want to do this? Then whatever, they're going to do it by any means. And so I think the point is that we have to prevent it from happening, and see the signs when they're there.
Yeah, exactly. And trust in our own intellect and critical analysis, that even going through the process of doing it puts you in a better place than not even going through the process, because it helps you to critically think and build on your analysis. And the more you sharpen your analysis, the better you'll get. Like, when you see people like a Kwame Ture or Alton Maddox or Fannie Lou Hamer, like, you know, these you know, who's the other sister that I'm thinking of, Ella Baker. Like, when you see the kind of things that they were saying, and that the kind of things that they were able to think about it and even critique about America, and why we say like, oh wow, they were saying that, they knew this. Like, you know, sometimes you see people who really have sharpened their analysis say things and say how things will play out in a way that seems prophetic, but it's not. It's that they have a clear understanding about our situation and the people that we deal with, and therefore they're able to make, you know, a clear analysis of what it is, and even tell you like, oh yeah, well, we've seen this is that, and this is how they operate. We're not taking up their games and their lives. No, this is probably how it's going to play out, and you see that. And so, you know, the importance of sharpening our analysis and going through the process of critical thinking is important.
You know, it's these distractions too that keep us from making these deep analysis about these things. But I'm saying that I want to appreciate the person who went up on the stage at the Kendrick Lamar performance in Super Bowl, right? That was just perfect because
Yes.
all of this talk, and it's still, people are still talking about the performance, whether it was good or not, and I'm just like, Congo, Sudan, Palestine, like these are the conversations that the masses should be having, right? Instead of whether Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance was good or bad and so forth, but that had that person put Sudan and Palestine just like right out there in the middle of that performance, to uplift that was very important. And shout out to him. I was reading that no charges were going to be filed, which they shouldn't.
Right, because there's no law. That's nothing different than when streakers run onto the the football field.
Yeah.
They don't get, I mean, then those streakers, I mean, obviously they're not wearing no clothes. So that's your, the only thing you could charge them with, but just running out there, that's not nothing.
Love it though. We
Me too.
For that, and free Congo, free Palestine, free Sudan, free Central Africa, free all of Africa, free African people, all colonized people. I don't know. I just felt compelled to say that, right? Because that's the point of all of this work we do. Not here having these conversations and uplifting it, but we every day in our lives. You are working directly on freeing political prisoners, right? Part of the work that I do that's on our platform, I may not be involved in organization around that, but I work with organizations that are fighting to free political prisoners. You guys, for instance, you guys are doing a workshop around political prisoners to bring that awareness to students. I know I'm digressing, but this is my spirit, though. I feel like
go ahead.
With everything going on,
lead you.
Seriously, like with everything that is happening, whatever we were talking about, just bring it home to we fighting to bring about a new world, to dismantle this colonial capitalist system. This is very important. So I just, whatever, that's happening and just these conversations that we having, folks can disagree, agree, whatever. Just know that hopefully we all on the same page in regards to what we need to get to and try to work on how we're going to get there. So that's where I'm at. That's where we are. But yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think everything that you said is spot on, and I think we want to let's jump to a Black Power break and have Kwame Ture, chime in this morning's show real quick. See you on the other side.
Europe has fought more fratricidal wars than any other continent or all the continents put together. Europe still speaks of European continental unity. Of course, Africa will unify before Europe, but that's not the point of discussion here this evening. The fact that Europe, with all the fratricidal wars she has fought, can speak of continental unity shows this evolutionary process. Africa, like any other society anywhere in the world, was involved in this same evolutionary process, going from family to tribe to clan to nation to continent. This evolutionary process was interrupted by European imperialism. It came in two forms: slavery and colonialism. First, they took over 300 million, the strongest, out of Africa, and then they divided Africa at the Berlin Conference. So you can see that Africa herself was moving on this evolutionary process. This evolutionary process, which would lead to continental unity, and Africa will still be the first continent unified, was interrupted by European capitalism. Since it was interrupted by European capitalism, an evolutionary process, the only way that Africa can unite today is through a revolutionary process aiming at a socialist economy. If capitalism destroyed us, it doesn't make sense to use capitalism to continue with it. We must use the antithesis of capitalism, which of course is socialism. And certainly if the evolutionary process has been interrupted, the only way we can capture the time lost is through a revolutionary process. We state these facts only to let you know that those of us who are revolutionary, Pan-Africanists, is not because we love revolution. It is historically determined, and we have no alternative but to follow history and to use history for the benefit of our people. So this then is the general outlines of Pan-Africanism. So you must not think that Africanism just began. Had Africa been left untrampled by European imperialism, we'd have a long time achieved continental unity. Secondly, Pan-Africanism must be seen as a movement, a mass movement. And this mass movement must be properly understood. Africa, of course, because of racism, is belittled everywhere. And many people do not see Africa's constant, underline the word constant, contributions to world civilization. Since the 1940s, Africa has given, even before the 1940s, actually, we can go back to the Honorable Marcus Garvey, Africa has given to world political movements a mass character. Africans revolt in masses, never as a vanguard party. If you look at the independence struggle in Africa, it was nothing less than mass. If you look at the struggle in the Caribbean for independence, it was nothing less than mass. And even in the United States of America, the only movement they call a mass movement is our movement. Therefore, this mass character must be properly understood. Pan-Africanism has this mass character. Africans have this mass character in responding. And our responsibility is to bring this mass character together, make it precise so that it can direct its blows at the enemy, hitting him until we knock him down. Therefore, the task of Pan-Africanism is to gather the masses of our people together in the same organization, irrespective of where they find themselves, be it in Europe, be it in the United States, be it in the Caribbean, or be it in Africa. This is the first aspect, then we must understand. Pan-Africanism found its organizational expressions in 1900. Here, a Pan-African conference, here the word conference, was organized by Africans from all over the world. They came together deciding that something must be done for Africa. One of the leading organizers of this conference was a man by the name of Henry Sylvester Williams, born in Trinidad, a man whom you should do some history on, a very, very great man. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois attended the conference, but he was not one of the leaders in 1900. By 1917, 1918, the idea of a necessity for a Pan-African Congress, not conference, Congress, was to be called. But most of the people who did the conference were dead. Henry Sylvester Williams was dead. A lot of them were dead. Du Bois was about the only one who was alive. Du Bois recognized he had a historic responsibility to continue the work of Pan-Africanism, so he called the first Pan-African Congress. Make a clear distinction. The first one in 1900 was a conference. Du Bois, being intelligent, understanding that a conference is limited and a Congress has more elasticity and can go longer, called it a Pan-African Congress. From the 1990s up until 1945s, we could say seriously, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois just about single-handedly kept the flame of Pan-Africanism alive. One thing must also be underlined to you. Pan-Africanism was brought into being in its organized form by the Africans outside of Africa. This was done only because of the oppression of Africa. At that time, Africa was under total colonial domination. There could be no political meetings. As a matter of fact, if you had the paper of the Honorable Marcus Garvey, you could go to jail. So the conditions were such that it was difficult for the Africans on the continent to organize. Africans off of the continent, recognizing this, came quickly to fill up that gap. So Pan-Africanism itself was brought to bear by the diaspora. But you must not think that the diaspora brought Pan-Africanism for the diaspora. Not at all. The center
Rise up. You are tuned into the Rise Up Morning Show on Black Power Media Reloaded. Make sure to, share this knowledge with some other people, each one teach one. So make sure you share this and make sure you subscribe so that you also know, every time that you need to get up on early in the morning with us, and come in and build and chat. Make sure, you're also chatting in the chat because we having a conversation. This is a conversation we all having together. Mm. So we definitely want you to, chime in and, each one teach one. We're all teaching each other. So, and we just had, that lesson from,
oh man,
Kwame
I love it. Kwame Ture. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I write poetry, you know that, but I wrote a bio, a poem. What would that be called? But a poem about Kwame Ture. Mm-hmm. there's a term for that, but yeah, it's a poem just about his history and the things that he accomplished. So yeah, one of those things I'm proud of. But that's how inspired I am by Kwame Ture. You have to be inspired by events and people to actually, write. At least for me, to write poetry, I have to be passionate about something. But he's the man. I appreciate that history. Wanted just to build on that. I think like Delaney is another person that we have to remember in his contribution to Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism. He's I don't want to say one of the first recorded to say Africa for Africans. I'll say one of the first, if not the first person that was recorded saying that, because I know we sort of think of maybe Edward Blyden or Edwin Blyden, sorry, Marcus Garvey, who's the most notable for saying Africa for Africans at home and abroad. But 1859, Martin Delaney also made that statement, Africa for Africans. And Martin Delaney as well, he was one of the African leaders in the United States at the time who was organizing to immigrate back to Africa. He actually visited Nigeria, Yoruba land. If you read their writings, they called it Yoruba land. I love it. There was no Nigeria, right? So he was exploring Yoruba land for a place to settle, for Africans to settle over there. And so during the 1850s, you had meetings that were taking place, color conventions that were going on where they were talking about considering immigration. And of course, like a lot of that would change after the Civil War, of course. So there was these ebbs and flows in regards to what Africans should be doing, whether we should be nation building or attempting to integrate. But I don't want to get all into that, but definitely just wanted to uplift Martin Delaney. And even take a look at Martin Delaney and Henry Garnett, who was another one who was talking about rebellion. They started the African Civilization Society. And just want to encourage folks to look into that African Civilization Society. And with many of our organizations, of course, like during that time in early 1900s, there was this like Christian characteristic with our organizations, right? That aspect, and this idea of civilizing or evangelizing Africans, which was a serious issue. So they do come with those contradictions, but just the understanding of us being African people and our struggles being connected wherever we are has to be appreciated.
And I think also too, I was listening to an interview by Obadele Cambone, and he was talking about how in Africa, we talk about like Africa for the Africans, and you're talking about us getting over there, and when you go to Africa, you see, to different countries, depending on the country, you have the Lebanese, you have, the Germans, you have the British, you have the Chinese, you have all of these people from other countries, settling there and owning a lot of businesses there. And those things, they're not doing those things in order for Africa to be strong. And when we think about, Pan-Africanism, we understand that Africa, until Africa is free, like the diaspora will continue to, deal with whatever they're dealing with in our particular positions, as Africa is dealing with what it's dealing with on the continent. And so he was, his thing is about repatriation and us going over there. And that was to his point about, strengthening Africa, how, we should be going over there. Us as Pan-Africanists in particular, he was talking about going over there to help strengthen Africa in the ways that we are, because so many foreign people and foreign companies are there to basically, plunder and take advantage of Africa. in ways that are
Who was that?
not,
I missed the name.
Obadeli Cambone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I hope I'm saying his name right, but I think I am.
This was a video or a book?
It was an interview.
Interview. Okay.
Yeah. So I think like that's, also key when we're thinking about what are our options for, moving forward in terms of like, where is the fight, where we need to be building, what we should be looking at, in connection to what Kwame Ture was talking about, us coming together and really, striking a blow toward white supremacy. And, where can we do that? And I think, increasingly, especially when people are talking about Africa being the future, it's the future based on who's positioning and whose vision, right?
Yeah.
If you know that, especially all of these foreign companies and all of these foreign interests are at hand within Africa and are trying to have a hand at determining, Africa's future. Whereas us as Pan-Africanism, Pan-Africanists, we need to be on the ground, in the streets of Africa, where it's at.
Yeah. I think too, just going back to what I mentioned in regards to Delaney and the color conventions, I feel like we need to do something similar today, where they were probably over 200 of these during the antebellum period and even after the Civil War. But today, where is that equivalent of African leaders, Black leaders coming together, having these conventions and discussing political issues and our way forward, and putting those minutes out for the public, for the community, to see what was discussed. Our newspapers covering them, because their newspapers, the colonized newspapers, won't cover them. So making sure that our media is covering these conventions and what was discussed during these conventions. They were having convention immigration even. So, conventions on nation building, so forth. Like, so we have these conferences, but these conferences aren't the same as these conventions that they were having.
Yeah.
So, these annual conferences and having discussions and putting forth articles or essays on certain topics, that's good. It's important. I love it. As someone who loves to present at these places and have those conversations and write on something new. But that's not going to free us. That's not going to liberate us, right? And it's more of an exercise than anything. We need to really have these sort of conventions, conversations that not in silos, but anyone who is organizations that are working in the community and are working in the interests of Black folks, bringing these people together, and let's, as a family, as a people, let's let's have a real conversation on how we're going to move on code and ask forward to advance and liberate our people.
Yeah, and I think it's also important too to point out that, to your point, I think one of the things that kind of stops people today is, the contradictions that exist. But we also have to understand that those people who did those conventions back then, they also, if you read the minutes, you'll see there were contradictions there too.
Oh yeah,
all that sure. People, even though, yes, it's a Pan-African conference or Congress, and people are coming from different parts of the diaspora, they had their contradictions as well. Even though, yes, all of us as African people are coming together, even though we're part of the diaspora and we're coming from different places, the experiences, we know they're very similar, but we know that there's those differences there that help to, have those contradictions exist. And so that it shows you, even though contradictions exist and that, contradictions will exist, that you need to still be having these formations, and that you can still come to a plan and you could still do things and take action, as a diaspora, as an African people together, even and in spite of the contradictions.
Yeah.
So I know. So let's jump into a story that Akimba will, talk to us about. about the DRC really quickly. So
DRC, no,
I mean,
the
no,
CAR.
the CAR, not the DRC.
Car. But that's one of the DRC is on my short list of focus areas. So I will probably be talking about them sometime this week. You're gonna pull it up. I don't want to get cursed out. This is,
I pulled it up. What should I not have pulled it up?
we want to be selective on who we
Yes, 100%.
sources that we use on here. So, but I could have just summed it up really quick. But yeah, Wagner's Successors Wage Campaign on Terror in Central Africa Republic, and I just want to bring awareness to what's going on in Central Africa Republic because it's not discussed a lot in these conversations of what's going on in Africa. So Congo gets attention, rightfully so, because of what's happening there. But there is a humanitarian crisis as well in Central Africa Republic. The regime that's in power now is working with the Russians and have been working with the Russians for years to quote unquote maintain order in the country because of the several groups that are revolting against the government. The government that's in power now, it's sort of like Congo. You have this struggle over territories or areas in Central Africa that are resource rich. So there's a huge population of impoverished people in Central Africa. I think you have somewhere over 2 million people who are living in who are in need of humanitarian aid. 1.3 million children who need humanitarian aid, and they say 7 out of 10 children. It's been reported that 7 out of 10 children do not attend school. Like, that's the type of situation in Central Africa Republic. Again, this is one of the poorest nations in the world, and there are Western and I want to say Asian countries that are exploiting the Central African people of their resources. Groups like the Shalina Group. There's a French company called K Groupe. I think that's the French name, but K Group, that is in Africa. And when you look them up, I don't know, some of this stuff is hard to. One of the things that I've noticed is over the years, some information becomes more difficult to find. Because I wrote an article on Central Africa Republic years ago. And so a lot of those sources, when I attempted to go back to them, I wasn't able to find them. So it becomes a lot more difficult to get information on Central Africa Republic. And you can attempt for yourself to see like what's being reported. And it's not going to be a lot that you find. And so that's why it's important to have these conversations. Again, you have the Russians who are there committing humanitarian crisis. Nobody is being brought up on any charges of not just humanitarian crisis, but humanitarian issues, but I guess you would call it that. But they are murdering Central African Republic, people of Central Africa Republic, and there's no, what's that when people commit these sort of like a genocide? What do they call that? I don't know why early in the morning. Excuse.
You said when people commit a genocide, what do they call it?
Yeah, like the international courts, war crimes. War crimes. So they're in Central Africa Republic committing war crimes, and nobody is being brought up on any charges. There's no real movement to end Russia's involvement in what's going on in Central Africa Republic. And again, the government is welcoming the Wagner Group, who is now, I think, Corps Group, into Russia to maintain order. The other thing, the founder of the Wagner Group, they built a statue of the founder of Wagner Group in Central African Republic. This guy and his partner, they have a statue in Central African Republic. Why? First of all, why are you even spending resources on a damn statue
Exactly.
of this? I was about to use the Kalanji word, white person who is committing crimes of humanity, against crimes of war against the citizens of that country. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about, bring some light on that issue.
Yeah, no, I think
Take
it's
that
also
in.
important too, when we're talking about how we see the whole picture, right? That I think as much as, we know what France is doing, what the UK is doing, and how their actions are impacting African countries, it's also important to know, what role Russia's playing in these countries as well, and how that there's that involvement when it comes to it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Then I just to bring something out, in this article, it talks about rich and natural resources, and that's there. I mean, there's coffee, there's which people can vet, right? People love their there's gold, there's all of these resources, and that's why I write diamonds there. But just really quick, rich and natural resources, by ethnic conflict, crippled by extreme poverty and rampant corruption, the Central African Republic has long been a case study of a failed state. It has also become a laboratory for a dangerous political experiment. State captured by a private company, in this case, a company that pairs war fighting and security with lucrative commercial interests, mainly extracting gold, diamonds, and timber. Right. And so you have a neo-colonialist government who is allowing these Russians to come in and extract. And the government sends these what do you call those, like private military groups into Russia. So it's not necessarily the Russian military that's there, but these private military groups are working in the interest of the Russian government, just like the U.S. says. So mercenaries,
yeah,
they send these
basically.
mercenaries. The company is or was the Wagner Group, the creation of a profane, politically connected St. Petersburg chef more than a decade ago. Wagner evolved into one of Russia's most potent fighting forces, at the vanguard of military operations on the ground in Syria, Libya, and most prominently Ukraine. Yevgeny Prigozhin also built parallel business networks that eventually spread into enterprises as diverse as school lunch catering in Russia and hardwood timber import in Africa. Wagner officially no longer exists. In name, though, after Prigozhin was killed in the August 2023 plane crash that most experts believe was a targeted assassination, likely orchestrated at the highest levels of the Kremlin. Just to get some context on that, this guy Prigozhin, it was stated or reported that he was organizing a coup d'etat. So he was looking to overthrow the Russian government, Putin and the Russian government. And so they saying that that's what his plane crash going down is saying that the Putin had something to do with that. But that's report. It hasn't been confirmed or denied. I'll say that. The company's armed units were mostly split up, incorporated into the defense ministry and other Russian agencies. But there's there's different of the groups of mercenaries that are not just in Central African Republic. They're all over Africa. Last time I was reading, somewhere like 30 plus countries that you have Russian involvement in. So just wanted to uplift that.
Yeah, I think also the story points to also again the role of multinational corporations in this colonial process, and how their finances can support in the destabilization of countries, And in the same way that not only in Africa, we know that their finances and their infrastructure can help to destabilize countries, but also how here in the United States that these corporations are also help to destabilize communities, and help to destabilize unions and people working to put their power together, like Kwame Ture said, and strike a blow to this settler colonial white supremacist hegemonic program that exists within the United States, but also outside worldwide as well. And so I think that's something that we always need to understand and keep in mind. And when we're thinking about why we need to build our institutions, but not only why we need to build our institutions, why we need to make sure that they're built to last. Because even this story about the Central Republic makes me think about, how that would be if we had soldiers, instead of sending soldiers from Kenya, from what's that? I'm forgetting the Caribbean countries that also sent some of their soldiers over into Africa. Instead of sending them there, why, us as the diaspora and, us even on the continent, if we are going to send soldiers somewhere to go fight, you need to be sending them somewhere to go fight and protect other African people, not somewhere to go and do the work of the oppressor. And so this story makes me think about like what the difference would be if we were able to have, those same soldiers that they're deploying on behalf of Western interests from these countries that are African countries with African people in them. What if we sent those same soldiers to protect and help defend African people in these places where you have these foreign armies and these foreign mercenaries attacking them, brutalizing them,
and foreign corporations.
Yeah, these foreign corporations brutalizing and committing genocide. So, with that said, I think unless you got something else to say, Akimba, we greatly appreciate everyone for being here with us this morning, this early morning. Thanks for getting up, Akimba, after your beauty rest, coming on and being with us today.
Hey, it was one of those things where I woke up in the middle of the morning. I mean, well, yeah, I guess you could say, middle of the night or morning, and then went back to sleep. So that kind of threw me off, No, but I appreciate being here, being with the folks. Definitely make sure you subscribe to the channel, like, share, and continue to come back and build with us for sure.
Absolutely. Rise up, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, or the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces when it's on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution. It's real solutions. Well, we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Well, my inner me, really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky. A chariot's a swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior is coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution. peace, real solutions. Where we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my enemy is really a mirror for the galaxy.